Hey there, welcome to Toy Talk with Mike and Chad, episode 16. I'm Mike.
I'm Chad.
And the toys that we're going to talk about today are purchases from the last week or so? 2 weeks?
Let's say the last 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Because I know there was some stuff that I purchased after we shot our last video that was not the Black Adam review.
Right. And yeah, I've done a few kind of solo videos while I was waiting for you to come back. So yeah, you've got a lot of stuff to cover the last few weeks. Where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the toy show?
Let's talk about the toy show, and then we can just go from there. I think I organized my pile so that it's in order of toy show, and then whatever.
Yeah, I apologize. I keep hearing that chair squeak.
It's okay.
I have to get some WD-40 on that chair. So we went to a toy show. And if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, that's very rare where we are. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, we never have toy shows. Never happens. Maybe once a year we have they call HalCon, which is our convention. That'd be the closest thing to going to a toy show. But anyway, in the past couple of months, they had one in, June or July?
It would have been June.
Yeah. So June, they had a toy show locally, the first one as far as I know ever. And then they had another one in October locally. And I'm talking super local, right in down the street from, we could have walked there.
Yeah.
And then they had another toy show just this past weekend in Moncton, New Brunswick. So we're in Nova Scotia. New Brunswick is one province over. It's about a 2.5 hour drive or so. We are on the road to the toy show. What's up, Chad?
What's going on, guys?
But yeah, you got wind of this show, and so we went to check it out. And what were your thoughts?
So initial reaction, I just remember looking at you and kind of being like, this is a little underwhelming for the drive.
Yes.
2.5 hours. It was basically a tank of gas there and back. So that's $100 right now. They were full of dinky cars, and I didn't think that was still a thing. Yeah. But the majority of it was cars and some random knickknacks and stuff. But I think once I went through some of the tables and looked at some of the products that were there definitely some interesting things. Not stuff that I would personally collect, but, as a toy collector, you can still respect everyone's niche kind of area. The comic book selection was great.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up any comics since I'm very behind in my reading, but I did manage to get a couple. One toy there, and then we went to a few other places, and I picked up some stuff there. So I think the experience was interesting, just to see how they're run in another province, and I guess this was the first one. So they're already talking about having another one next year. So it was obviously successful, and some of the vendors we were talking to mentioned how the line was around the block, and there was definitely stuff for everyone, just not what I thought it would be.
Okay. I'll share my thoughts in a second, but I think I'm going to grab the can of WD-40. I don't know if you can hear as much as I do, but literally every movement you do, I hear squeak, 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 and the mic's probably picking it up, so I apologize.
Okay.
Let's see if we can take care of that. I don't know. Now I can't pick this fucking thing up. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. WD-40.
Squeak is gone.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so toy show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed when I got there, to be honest with you, because when we went to the Sackville Toy Show in our area, it was small, but I expected it to be small because we're in a suburb. It's a small, suburb of the city of Halifax. So the fact that it was off in the suburbs, and it's the first time, I wasn't surprised that it was small. But Moncton, it's a small city, but it's still a city. And just the way it was described, it seemed like there was going to be more vendors, and they were, cosplay available. So I was expecting a bigger show. When we got in there, and it was about the same size or smaller than the shows we had in Sackville, and I was like, oh, really? We drove 2.5 hours for this? And, it seemed a little sad almost. And then there wasn't that many people, people shopping. And there was a couple, weirdos in their cosplay.
Yeah.
One Ghostbuster, one random furry, I think, in just a full fox costume. And then the big comfy couch girl.
Yeah.
And what else was there?
I think that might have been it. Like a kind of soldier girl, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know if they were part of the show to attract kids, or they were just people that showed up and just wanted an excuse to walk around in their costumes or whatever. But, and there were a lot of dinky cars, and there were a lot of new toys and packaging. So new Marvel Legends, new DC figures, and that's all well and good. The figures that I got, which I'll show you, are new. I got a decent deal on them. But when I go to a toy show like this, I was kind of hoping for bins and bins of old Star Wars toys and old G.I. Joes and old Transformers. Maybe things that are a little dinged up and loose and, selling them for a couple of bucks. $5 G.I. Joes, $3 G.I. Joes, But there was basically none of that stuff. There was a table or two that had a couple old Ninja Turtles and a couple old G.I. Joes. We're talking 4 or 5 of them. But yeah, definitely not what I expect when I'm going to a toy show. I don't really want all new retail stuff that I could just buy at the store anyway. But I did end up getting some stuff. I didn't bring very much money with me anyway because I wasn't planning on spending much money. But I spent the money I brought and more. So it's hard to say it was unsuccessful. I got lots of toys, lots of comics. Yeah, so it was a good time. I'm glad you convinced me to go.
Yeah, it was worth a trek up. Next year when they have it, I think, I might do a little more poking and prodding to see what they do. It was a good way to spend a day anyway, regardless. But keeping that in mind, next year might depend on how they improve it from the attendance this year.
Yeah. So you want to get into our purchases at the show?
Yeah. So I can start because I didn't have as much as you did.
Okay.
So a couple episodes ago, I was talking about Hush.
Right.
And that stupid Amazon gray one that they sent me.
Did you bring that by chance? You should have brought that over.
I forgot to bring it.
That's all good.
That's annoying. But I bought the DC McFarlane Hush figure on Amazon for $42.99. Got it in hand, and it was one of the non-painted ones. So the Chase figure, which they call the Platinum version, and it's apparently ultra rare. Anyways, thought about returning it, and I read the comments, and most of them said they'll just send you another one. And there were quite a few comments like that.
Yeah.
You'd get the same one. So at said toy show, the Comic Hunter, which is a local comic shop in Moncton, I think it's the biggest one in the area, actually.
Yeah.
I was looking at the DC figures they had on the table, and look who showed up.
So now you have the exact same figure in color and in solid gray.
Which I'll probably try to sell the solid gray.
Yeah.
But what attracted me to this, I was going to buy it anyway, but the price was $27, which is automatically cheaper than what I paid for the first one. And it was marked down from $35.99 to $27. So I actually ended up, I guess you could say, saving $15 by the time taxes were calculated and everything. So I'm happy with that. I'll display this one and look into selling the other one.
It's not a bad figure. As far as the colors go, I do find the color of his jacket's kind of puke green almost. Yeah. I feel like it should be like a brown trench coat.
I think, I'm colorblind, so I have trouble seeing that. It does look it's
kind of green in it. Kind of snotty colored. So, anyway, better than solid gray. But,
definitely better than solid gray.
Yeah, I think a brown or tan jacket would have suited him better, but what have you.
So then we left. We went to explore the Toys R Us. It was neat to go into another store and see what they had.
Yeah.
Up here in Halifax, where we live, they're notorious for having tens of the same figure at like their outrageous prices.
Yeah.
So we were walking down the toy aisle, and we have the G.I. Joe Cobra Island Roadblock, and you had said, hey, $17.
Yeah, that's a good price for him.
So I just started collecting some of the G.I. Joes, not as heavy as you do.
Yeah.
Definitely won't be a completionist on this. But $17, you can't go wrong with that. He's a solid figure.
Yeah, that guy was hard to get for a while because he's a Target exclusive in the States. And up here in Canada, we still have Toys R Us's, and Target exclusives usually show up at Toys R Us, but they can be notoriously hard to track down. They don't seem to get very many of them. And so I ended up getting this Roadblock
a while ago.
Yeah, a while ago, but he was released like more than a year ago. So I was hunting that guy down for a while. And now they have so many of them, they're marking them half price essentially. So, yep, so that's a good score for $17.
And then I was looking through the reaction figures. Their location definitely has a lot more reaction figure selection than ours did.
Yeah.
From all different franchises. But I saw a Firefly reaction figure, and I'm kind of into the ninjas. And I don't know if you classify him as a ninja.
Well,
he's a saboteur.
Yeah, he wasn't a ninja at first, but then they later filled in his backstory that he is a ninja.
Yeah.
So back then, just saboteur, but he looks like a ninja anyway.
So me kind of collecting these is, I'm only going for the cool ones, the ones that I think look good. So I definitely won't be a completionist. So those were the figures that I got on our excursion on Saturday.
Right. So one at the toy show, two at Toys R Us. Now for me, so you mentioned we went to the Comic Hunter, which is it's a cool comic store there. It's a new location, and the location is really nice looking. It's it's not a new building, but new to them, and they've got it all painted up. I took a couple pictures of it on the front. It's like a nice red painted, like it really pops on the street. And then on the side, they have this awesome mural of the Fantastic Four fighting Galactus. It's very like Jack Kirby-esque. And it's a long mural and everything, like really cool. So I really like the new location. The upstairs has board games and all that sort of stuff, and
miniatures, magic cards, Pokemon, all that stuff.
Gundam models.
Yeah.
And then downstairs, a pretty good toy selection and a really good back issue selection. I could have spent hours there just flicking through back issues. So for toys, at Comic Hunter, I got this pack here. This is a G.I. Joe Classified Viper pack, so you get 3 different Vipers in this box set. And I'm not going to go into detail on this because I'm going to do a full G.I. Joe Classified review. Right. I have a bunch of figures piled up over here.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, so I'm going to cover them in that video. But this was a great score because I had this pre-ordered on Big Bad Toy Store, and it was $89.99 on Big Bad, which is the U.S. price. And in Canada, you got to times everything by it's an extra 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
So that would easily bump me up to $120 or so, and then I got to pay shipping
and convert.
Well, with the $90 converted is $120.
With the shipping.
Yeah. And then the shipping, and then sometimes you always run the risk of getting dinged with customs charges at the door. Anyway, so they had this at the Comic Hunter for $59.99 Canadian. So this after taxes and everything, it was like $80, like even for Canadian, and it's like wow, $80 as opposed to the $130 I would have had to pay, ordering it from Big Bad Toy Store. And it's not that Big Bad Toy Store has a bad price on it. That seems to be the kind of the standard going price. I don't know why Comic Hunter had it so cheap. They might have messed up or something. But
yeah, we were talking about that after.
But yeah, anyway, I appreciate it, Comic Book Hunter. And, even if they kind of realized they might have screwed up, because they were asking some questions when I showed up there saying, I'm looking for this set because I pre-ordered it online before we drove up there. And they were kind of, as they were ringing it through, there was a little kind of scratch in their heads and stuff. So I think they might have realized they priced this too low. But they honored it and they didn't say anything to me about it. So that was a really cool find. So also at the comic show, So from the same guys. So we went to the actual Comic Hunter location afterwards, but the guys from Comic Hunter were represented at the toy show, and they had a table of new stuff. And so I bought this item. So this is a new 2-pack of Marvel Legends. This is Venom and Knull. Do you know anything about Knull? Or
not so much.
So this is Venom. He's been popular since the 90s, but most of the Venom comic books have been not great over the years. But in the last couple of years, there was this writer, Donny Cates, that came onto the book, and he kind of really gave Venom some credibility. He was actually writing good storylines, and he invented this character, Knull. Actually, I think Knull technically first appeared in a Thor book, but Donny Cates took what was kind of a throwaway character and elevated him in this book, and he turned him into basically the god of the symbiotes, and he came to Earth in a full alien invasion. It was a big crossover called King in Black, and anyway, it was a cool series, and that's where this Venom with the bat wings and the Lord Knull come from. So this is another set I had pre-ordered on Big Bad Toy Store, also for I think $80 US. Plus shipping, plus conversion. So this would have cost me $120 as well. Anyway, they had it priced at $80, taxes in, flat. So this cost me $80 Canadian, and again, saved me like $40 or so.
Well, especially when they're selling those at Toys R Us for, ridiculous prices. I mean, that's still good. But
yeah, like that Venom Knull pack, it's at my local Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Now, had I known it was going to show up there, I might not have even bothered to pre-order it from Big Bad. But I pre-ordered it months ago in Big Bad. I saw it at Toys R Us recently. But the price at Toys R Us, I think, was $100 at least, maybe even $100.
I think it was $109.
Yeah, $109 or so. Canadian plus taxes, so that would have put me up at $125 or so. The price would have been about the same. So I was just going to stick with my Big Bad order just to honor that anyway, because the price would have been about the same. But yeah, I had to cancel the pre-order when I got it for this good of a deal. I'm not going to just throw away $40.
Right.
So, cool stuff there. I do have the figures. I'm not sure if I'm going to review them in this episode. Me and Chad, he brought a huge stack of stuff. I don't know if I really have time to do a close-up review, so maybe I'll save Venom and Knull for another episode. But just to give you an idea, so here's Knull. So he is a good size figure. He's bigger than the standard 6-inch figure. Here's another figure I might talk about in this episode. So this is Sentry from Marvel Legends. Yeah. So you can see size-wise. Knull is a good size, deluxe figure. So, it would be justifiable to charge, $40, $50 for this guy anyway, if not more so. Nowadays, these figures cost you $40, so I would expect him to be $60. And then the Venom, he's got these huge wings, and
Jesus.
Yeah, it makes for a pretty impressive figure once you get them all strapped together here. So when you consider that you're getting this Venom and this Knull, it does justify the price somewhat for it being as expensive as it is. But anyway, it was a great price, and both these figures are really nice. It's a really solid Venom. The wings pop out, as you can see. So if you don't like that look for your Venom, which I'm not super keen on. However, I already have 6 or 7 Venom figures, so this at least kind of makes it look a little different on my shelf. And then Knull, he's a really cool character, and it's the first time he's ever had a figure before. So it's definitely a set you might want to consider picking up, especially if you find a good deal on. So I wasn't sure if I was going to insert a close-up review of these figures, but I'd kind of rather just get it over with in one video. That way I can put these guys away in my collection. If I don't do a close-up, more detailed review, they're just going to sit on my desk waiting for me to get enough new Marvel Legends in to make it worth my while to do a whole video, and whatever. I've already showed you them in the box, so why don't we show you them outside of the packaging. So I'm shooting this little bit the next day, so Chad isn't with me right now. But so let's first take a look at Knull. So as I said, this is the first Knull figure we've ever gotten. And, he's not my favorite character. When they introduced him as the god of the symbiotes, I think they probably could have come up with something cooler. This guy, the white skin, the long white hair, it looks like kind of your classic Dracula or, vampire character. And then he's got a very kind of medieval set of armor on. He's not a bad character. I don't hate him by any means. But, he wasn't all that original. Although I guess I should be thankful that he's not just another symbiote, because I don't know how many of those guys we can possibly stand. There's about 20 different symbiotes running around, and they're basically just Venom in different colors. So I am glad that Knull is at least something a little different. Now, I think he's entirely newly sculpted. Because he is so tall, as I showed you earlier, I don't think they've reused any of these parts from anybody else. This is all pretty unique with the banded arms and all that stuff. You'll notice he's got a double jointed elbow. So there's like the 2 seams there, and he's pinless, which doesn't matter to me a whole lot, but with most action figures, you see like a little circular pin here that connects the pieces. But there seems to be a real trend now, a way to move away from pinned joints. So that's kind of nice. Same thing with the knees, double jointed knees, no pins. I'm not going to go into all of his articulation because he moves like any other Marvel Legend does. And I think he looks pretty cool. He's got that sword as an accessory, which is kind of a crazy, unique sword. So that's also a new piece. Now, he did have an extra head as well. So this is the secondary head that he came with, which is much more kind of scary and demonic with all those teeth. I don't know. This head is scarier. I kind of like my action figures to have more neutral expressions. And one thing that kind of bothers me about this look is that clearly Knull has lips, like when you see this head. So I don't mind him having exposed teeth, but it seems a little weird that his lips seem to completely disappear on this head. Chad mentioned that he thought this guy looked like Vigo from Ghostbusters 2, and I could definitely see that resemblance as well. Anyway, pretty cool figure. I like it. So now let's take a look at Venom. There's not a whole lot of new parts here either, I don't think. Like, I have so many Venoms in my collection, really more than I need. I probably wouldn't have bought this one if he came solo. Like, the wings alone aren't enough for me to buy another Venom, because it's not like that's a look he's really going to maintain. He kind of had it for one scene of one story. It's not really his thing. So while this is kind of cool, and I like that it makes him stand out from other Venoms, it's not something I would have needed. I only really bought this to get the Knull figure. But this is a cool Venom. Like, don't get me wrong. I like him. He's well sculpted. He's well articulated. Now, what's kind of surprising to me is that the King in Black storyline is from the comic books. Knull has only ever appeared in comic books. So I kind of thought Venom might be more of a comic book Venom. Like, here's my kind of go-to comic book Venom. This looks like Venom from his first appearance. It's my favorite version of Venom, without a big long tongue. He's not super huge like some other versions we've gotten. I also have Agent Venom. I have Space Knight Venom. But this is my favorite. This is kind of standard first appearance Venom. And really, this is more what Venom looked like in the King in Black storyline. But instead, what they've given us is basically a movie Venom. So this is Venom from the live action movies. Now, the head is different, but you can see the base body, I think, is basically the same. The upper torso is probably new because they've added the holes for the wings. But both these Venoms, kind of tower over the standard Venom. So yeah, I'm not sure why they went with essentially another movie Venom. Now, obviously, it's not entirely movie Venom, because as you probably know, in the movies, Venom never has the spider, which I guess makes sense because he has no connection to Spider-Man in the movies. But here we basically get a movie Venom with the classic comic book symbol, a unique head sculpt with all those teeth showing, and then the big giant wings on the back. There is a joint on the wings, so they fold a little bit, but not a lot. Like some other winged characters, I would expect this part of the wing to kind of fold behind them so they could go behind his back. But you see the fold is in the front there. So there's not much you can really do with the wings. You can fold it like so, but it doesn't really tuck out of the way. And it does fall apart pretty easily. They don't stay together very well. So there's that. But overall, I think it's a pretty good pack. I should mention Venom. You see I've got him there with his clawed hands. He did come with some closed fists as well. And he did come with an alternate head with the tongue out, which, some people like that, but it's not really my preference. And before I move on, I kind of pointed out this guy in my video a moment ago when I was doing a size comparison. But this is actually a new figure for me. This is the new version of the Sentry. They put out a Sentry figure a couple of years ago, and I passed on it. And he's not exactly one of my favorite characters. If you don't know much about Sentry, he's a character that's essentially Marvel's Superman, or one of them. He gets his power from the sun, I believe, and he flies around. He's super strong. He's got the cape and everything. Very much Superman. There was a whole kind of gimmick when they first introduced him into the comic books. I was going to say a couple of years ago, but it's probably been over 10 years ago now when they first introduced Sentry. But what they did is, rather than say, look, we created a new character, is they kind of did this little hoax where they said they found this old character that Stan Lee created in the 60s, and they were going to integrate him into the Marvel Universe where he belonged. But that was really not the case. This was a newly created character. So yeah, I do like that, at least with the long hair. He didn't always have long hair. Earlier versions of him in the comic book, he actually had short hair. Sometimes he actually wore a full mask. I do like this long hair version. It kind of differentiates him from Superman a little bit. He came with, besides the fists, he came with these trigger hands, which is kind of weird because, you know, those look like gun-holding hands, but Sentry doesn't come with any guns, and he certainly wouldn't need any guns any more than Superman would. I would have thought maybe giving him like flight hands, like flat hands like this, would have made more sense. And then he also comes with this creepy head where the skin is all melted off and his hair is on fire. And this is representative of when he transforms into his alter ego, the Void, which I won't get into all that, but if you're curious, go read his Wikipedia page. But overall, this is a pretty cool figure, and I am glad I waited, because I have considered going back and buying that original Sentry figure from a few years ago, but this one I think is much better. Everything from this cape is sculpted on where the old one wasn't. They've changed up his belt, they've changed up the colors. You know, it's an all-new figure, and I think it's definitely a better figure. So, overall, I'm pretty pleased with all of these guys. Lastly, at the toy show, I picked up one old toy, and it's not that old. This is the War for Cybertron Sunstreaker. Now, I'm pretty much a completist when it came for the War for Cybertron figures. I was buying all of them. But this guy, for whatever reason, was really hard to find. He never showed up anywhere locally, and these toys were not hard to find like regularly. These guys were everywhere. But this one guy was really hard to find for no particular reason. And even Big Bad Toy Store, they just didn't have him for pre-order. Like, they had every other toy, so I'm not sure what it was with him, if he was short-packed or something. I wasn't super heartbroken about it, because I do have another Sunstreaker in my collection. But anyway, I found him, and so I bought him loose, you know, like a used figure. And yeah, so he was a pretty cool find. I'll talk about him in detail in another episode as well, because I have a pile of Transformers here that I want to review. So there you go, Sunstreaker. Otherwise, at the comic show and the Comic Hunter kind of combined, I got a really good stack of comic books. It was mostly a lot of old Spider-Girl comic books and Spider-Man comic books from the 90s. Like, I've been collecting Spider-Man comic books since I was 8 years old, and I've never stopped. So I have pretty much every regular issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Adjectiveless Spider-Man. Yeah. But in the 90s, it was so much Spider-Man that they were putting out all these like mini-series and all these like extra things. And I sometimes skipped those. Anyway, so I was able to kind of fill in some holes in my collection by grabbing some of these weird little sidelined Spider-Man books and some Spider-Girl books. I got like a Jack of Heart mini-series from the 80s. I got the final issue of Darkhawk. So yeah, and they were all priced pretty cheap, like $3 to $4 an issue, and then 25% off. So a nice little haul of comic books, like a stack, like yay high, and I'm going to be reading through those for a while. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers my Moncton trip. I didn't buy anything at Toys R Us. So yeah, that's that.
Okay. So Wednesday is traditionally New Comic Book Day.
Which is today for us.
Unless you're a DC fan, and now it's Tuesdays. I went in... excuse me. I went into my comic book store today. You had actually sent me a picture yesterday, and I was like, oh God, what's he sending me now? Because it looks kind of cool. And it's the Last Ronin. The TMNT Last Ronin series, which just came out. I was a big fan of that. That's the first time that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were back together in like almost 30 years. With the bad blood and everything.
Now, I haven't read it yet, so don't spoil.
I would not spoil it.
Although, to be honest, it was spoiled for me a little bit. So, Last Ronin, the premise, even though I haven't read it, I know this much. It's supposed to be kind of a future story where only one Ninja Turtle is still alive, I think.
Yeah.
And so he's he's supposed to be kind of dark and brooding.
Yeah.
So you'd almost assume that's Raphael. I didn't know. And they never really spoiled that. The comic series, it took a long time to come out. Because how many issues was it in total?
It was 6 in total.
And there were some long delays between the issues.
COVID.
Yeah, but I'm the kind of guy that I collect Ninja Turtle comic books, but I buy them in trade paperback. So I have to wait for the collected edition. That hasn't come out yet as a collected edition, so you were buying the single issues. Yeah. So since I have to wait, whenever you wait for the trade paperback, you run the risk of the stories getting spoiled for you. So the other, yesterday, was it?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
So we go to different comic shops here in the city. I go to Strange Adventures, you go to Giant Robot. So I looked at Strange Adventures Instagram, and they said, this is the new toys we got this week. And I didn't even know this toy was coming out.
Me either.
So it's the figure of that lone turtle from Last Ronin. And they have it in color, and they have a black and white edition. So, go ahead and stick them up there. So we both went out and bought the black and white edition.
Although I think yours might have been $10 cheaper than mine.
Mine was $10 cheaper. So they posted both of these. And I was like, oh, because I knew NECA, who they make a lot of Ninja Turtles figures. Yeah. They have a Last Ronin figure coming.
2 figures.
Yeah. And
which I also pre-ordered today when I was at the Giant Robot.
And so this toy is actually made by Playmates that did the Ninja Turtle figures, the original Ninja Turtle figures back in the 90s. And I was like, oh, I didn't know Playmates was planning a Last Ronin figure. And so looking at the pictures at Instagram, I was definitely drawn to the black and white one. Because many years ago, I don't know how many, I want to say 15 years ago maybe, there was NECA put out a set of Ninja Turtles. It was the 4 turtles together in a box set, and they were sculpted to look like the original Mirage drawings from the Eastman and Laird comics. And I wanted that set, and there was a color version and a black and white version. And my comic shop, Strange Adventures, had them both. But at the time, they were probably too expensive, which was probably like $80. And I passed on them. I have since got the colorized versions, but I always kind of regretted not getting the black and white version. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, that looks really cool. They didn't have a price posted. So I messaged the guy at Strange Adventures. I said, how much are you looking for that Ninja Turtle? And he said, the standard colored one is $40. The black and white one is $50. And I was like, ew, $50? And I'm like, let me see if I can find any reviews on this toy online. And so that's when I found out that it was smaller than I was probably expecting. Because most Ninja Turtle figures nowadays are like in the 6-inch kind of scale. This guy is more like 4.5 inches. And that kind of made me think like, ooh, I don't know if it's worth $50 to me. But then I found out that the black and white figure is the chase figure. Which means you can't just go and order the... Kind of like he was complaining about with his Hush figure. Yeah. You order it online, and you might get that solid gray one, which nobody wants, but it's the luck of the draw. You don't get to choose, and that's the same with this. So if I didn't buy it now and it's sold out, I couldn't just decide a week later that I want the black and white one. If I ordered it online, I might get the color one. And then I went and checked eBay, and people were selling this for over $100 on the secondary market. They were listing them at $120 American, $130 American. Now I don't know if they'd sold many at those prices, but I was like, shit, I better not pass this up at $50. So I asked them to put it aside for me. I told Chad, check these out. They look awesome. And then you messaged me back and you're like, I just had my comic shop put both versions aside for me.
Yeah, and kind of the same attitude you had. Like, I was looking at this, and this sort of is reminiscent to me of the first Turtle comic, because if I remember correctly, it was in black and white.
Yeah. Last Ronin never was, interestingly enough.
No.
So.
But, it's kind of... This story evolved out of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird getting back together. And this was actually something that they had planned while the Turtles were at their height. Yeah. And it just never came to fruition. So when I was looking at this, it also reminded me of that black and white Jim Lee Spider-Man you have and the Jim Lee Batman I have. So... Yeah. I was kind of thinking the same thing. You know, I don't want to miss the opportunity for the black and white because I paid $10 more, which this one would have run me 67 something with taxes.
Yeah.
I only decided to get this one. And then I was looking, and...
So before you move on, I just want to quickly say, like, just glancing at this figure, like, I thought maybe I would open this up and do a full review for you guys in this episode. I probably won't. I'll save it for another episode. Yeah. But my first impressions, I love it. Okay, I know I just said that I wasn't going to do a close-up review of the Last Ronin figure, but I've decided I might as well. We had enough time, so I decided to shoot one and edit one in. However, this is the next day after me and Chad shot our video, but I didn't want to leave him out of the conversation, so I've invited Chad here to join us. Hey, Chad.
Thanks for having me back on, Mike.
No problem. So, with this setup we have going right now, oh, that's weird. I didn't really even anticipate that I'd see myself in the screen there. Anyway, no matter. So, we've got you there to the side, and you can't see this turtle, but I have opened up our Last Ronin figure here now. It's not focusing on him super well. There he is. When he's in focus, you're out of focus. So
that's okay.
Yeah. So you haven't opened yours yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
No. Have you taken some time to enjoy him inside the box at least?
I have. I've stared at him quite a bit and read that back cover quite a few times.
No, I haven't even read the back. Is there anything interesting on there?
Not really. It just tells the story of the lone turtle.
All right. So this is where I'll show the audience the back of the figure, and you can enjoy the front of him.
Oh wow!
So yeah, he looks pretty great.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I really think they did a good job of the way the line work is kind of painted on him. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, he looks sharp. I really hope like the white is so perfectly crisp white, like a brand new T-shirt out of the package. I hope he doesn't like yellow over time. He probably will, but right now he looks great.
Like I think the line work just makes that figure.
Yeah, it's
like on its own, it's not a very appealing looking figure.
Yeah, I really didn't care for the colored one that much.
Version, yeah. So like that just pops out, and like I mentioned in the video when we shot the first part last night, it's almost reminiscent of like that Jim Lee style Superman and Batman figures that we both own.
Yeah. Now, while I was doing some editing today, I actually put in a still image of the Superman and the Batman, so people would know what you're talking about. But maybe I'll actually go grab that Superman for a second, just for a little side by side. Okay, so here is the Jim Lee styled Superman. I think these were called artist editions.
Yeah.
And these guys, they actually even have, I think they might have a little bit of blue in them almost to represent the...
I think there were certain shades.
Yeah, but he's supposed to look like a line drawing, like a pencil drawing.
Yeah.
And I think it came off pretty successfully. I like this figure quite a lot. I think it looks even better on the Ninja Turtle, though, to be honest with you. They're both nice, but the white on the turtle it's a sharper white. And the blacks are a little blacker, as opposed to the Superman that's kind of a gray pencil tone.
Well, and like, I know we were talking about this...
yeah, just...
either before we started filming yesterday or during the shoot, that like it's a limited edition, so
yeah.
Limited run figure, and I would have hated to miss out on that, but like
and
after looking at the collar, and let's say they didn't have a chase variant,
yeah,
I don't even know if I would have bought the figure because like it just looks underwhelming for me.
Yeah. And you know what? I know we talked about how people were selling these on eBay for like $120 and stuff. I went to go grab a screen grab of that so I could put it in there when we were talking about it. And the price on this has dropped substantially, probably because those people were probably selling it pre-street date, which was why it was. But if you look on now, like they're selling for like $60 and stuff. So not far from what we paid for it, really.
Yeah.
But no matter. I am glad I got it. I have no regrets about that at all. And another thing looking at it, so when, like I mentioned when we were talking earlier, that when I first saw this figure and I didn't know it was coming out, I was like, well, let me do a little bit of research to see if it's worth my time. And that's when I learned that it was only as big as the vintage Ninja Turtles from the 80s. So I grabbed one of my vintage Ninja Turtles. So I got my vintage Raphael here. And size-wise, I still think this turtle, I don't know if you can really see that. I'm trying to show you and show the audience, but the Ronin is bigger, but that might partly be because the old turtles were stuck with their squatty legs.
Yeah.
So like their legs were bent. I could see these guys fitting into the same universe, if Raphael could stand up straight. But it is by no means like a figure that seems like it's from the original line. Like those figures didn't have very much articulation and stuff. This guy's loaded up. I'm just noticing now as I'm playing with him in front of you. He's got double jointed elbows and double jointed knees. Which means rather than just do the, the 90-degree angle, you can almost do a full, 180 by kicking the leg around and bending the arm around. It's really good articulation. What else do you get? So his head is limited. That hood really kind of limits the move.
Hood, yeah. Which, unfortunate that I guess that would defeat the purpose of the figure, having...
He does. He has an articulation at the waist too, so he turns a little bit at the waist, not a ton. But regardless, so it's not crazy. You're not going to get this guy in crazy ninja poses, but you're definitely going to get him in more than your vintage turtles for sure. Now for accessories, now I noticed he's got this rope and grappling hook attached to his belt. I don't know if that comes off. But that's kind of a cool piece. He does have other little loops on his belt, which I'm sure are used to store some of the other weapons. There's a loop on the front, there's a loop on the back. He's got the sheath for the sword, and another sheath for the bow.
It comes with two swords, right? The broken one and the regular sword.
So what he's got here is
or maybe that's going to be the...
No, I think you're right. So he's got the Donatello bow staff. He's got the two Raphael size.
Right.
Then he's got the two Mikey nunchucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got a full size Leonardo sword.
Was yours floppy?
No, it's pretty gummy. It bends.
Oh, okay.
Very
Yeah,
easily.
because mine in the package was half sticking up. I'm sorry, everyone. I've been having voice cracks all day. I'm going to fade in and out here, so try to ignore those.
That's all good.
Yeah.
And then the other sword, you're right. It comes in two parts. So it's actually the broken handle and then a broken blade.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I haven't read the story yet, so I don't know the significance of that, but I guess that's kind of cool.
Also, if you're leaving comments, please don't comment that. Spoiler free, guys.
But yeah, I started saying this in our interview, or in our episode yesterday, about how it did get spoiled for me. I actually do know which turtle this is.
Right, okay.
Because I found a review of the toy, and in the first line, the guy was like, we all know by now that this is so-and-so, right? And I was like, damn it.
Oh.
So, anyway, I do know which turtle the Last Ronin is. And for accessories, he also has two little throwing stars here, which are pretty standard for most Ninja Turtle toys. And then one other. You take martial arts. What's that? It's like a little throwing star.
Oh, a shuriken.
That's what I was thinking. That Mortal Kombat thing, shuriken or whatever he says. All right, so yeah, I think this guy's awesome. I really do love this figure. And we'll do a couple more size comparisons. You're not really going to be able to see this, Chad, but
Okay.
So we got him there compared to the vintage. So he's a little taller than that. Then here I've got one of the 2012 Ninja Turtles. So he looks probably better to that. He's probably about the same height as him because those turtles were standing fully upright. So that works. But also we talked about when we first learned how tall this turtle was, it was a little discouraging because most turtles nowadays, like here is the NECA animated turtle. So you can see how tall he is. And then I've got one of Super 7's Ultimate Turtles here and he like really kind of towers over all of them. I also have the NECA movie figures, which are about as tall as the Super 7s, maybe a little slightly shorter. I also have, this is one of NECA's. I mentioned in the video when we were talking earlier, Chad, about how there was this pack of colored turtles, and I wish I got the black and white ones back in the day. So I have one of those turtles as well, and you can see he's about the same height as the animated NECA turtles. So this last Ronin guy is kind of small comparatively across the line, but
I think it's part of the charm, though. Like, I mean, sure, another inch on that figure would have been nice just to keep him to scale with some of the modern ones, but I think it's part of the charm that he's just kind of a throwback to like the squat. I'm assuming he has squatty legs.
No, like they're fully extended. They're I don't know if you can see them there, but
yeah,
they're straight legs.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean,
but regardless, yeah, I agree. Like the size of him is fine. Turtles are one of those lines where I'm not so worried about the like if I want to say play with this guy with one of my G.I. Joes, about being like, oh well, he's not as tall as my G.I. Joes, because the scale of the Ninja Turtles is kind of hard to gauge anyway. Like how big should a mutant turtle be? Like if you look at the Michael Bay movies, they're huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's no proper scale. They don't look at a place. Like when you see a G.I. Joe next to an Optimus Prime, you know that truck is not the right size for that person or whatever. But turtles, there's some wiggle room there. So, yeah, I think this guy came out pretty good.
Be interesting to compare him to the two NECA Last Ronin figures that come out in like 3 weeks, I guess.
So, yeah, you think you're definitely getting those?
I have both pre-ordered, yeah. So I plan to pick them up just because I'm a huge fan of that storyline.
All right, so there we go. So that is a closer look at the Last Ronin figure from Playmates. I think that's a thumbs up from both of us. Hey, Chad?
Absolutely.
Anyways, that aside, I continued looking in Giant Robot. Somebody got me into G.I. Joes, which is now a new pitfall. Don't have to talk about this guy much because you are going to do a review about him. But I ended up getting Sergeant Stalker. Now, in my G.I. Joe line, I already mentioned I'm not going to be a completist. I'm probably just going to go for the guys or girls that I think look cool.
Yeah, Stalker, that's a great figure. I got mine a little while ago, but he's been sitting on my desk waiting for a review. I still have one more G.I. Joe in the mail that's supposed to come next Monday, I think. So once he arrives, I'm going to do a G.I. Joe review, and I've probably got over 10 G.I. Joe classified figures to review now. So Stalker will be one of them. So if you want a closer look at him, maybe just wait a week or so, and I'll have a video up. I've previously reviewed this figure and this figure because I already own them. So if you're curious about those guys, just go find my prior videos with those on it. But yeah, he's a cool figure.
So that happened. So I did that.
And before you get into your older stuff, so today I did pick up one other figure myself at Strange Adventures, plus like $150 worth of comic books. But I also went with this Oogie Boogie reaction figure from Nightmare Before Christmas. Now, I am sad to report, I've always found reaction figures to be kind of overpriced at $25 for what they are. This is now $29.99.
Oh my god.
So this is what I was paying for Marvel Legends like a year ago. And if I hadn't asked them to set it aside, I might have held off on this because I could order this from Big Bad Toy Store. Even with the American conversion and everything, it would still be probably cheaper than this. But because I'd asked him in advance to put it aside for me, when I went in today and he handed it to me, I was like, ooh, $29.99. I didn't want to like not buy it. But it's kind of an ugly price. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Toys are skyrocketing in price. This looks like a cool figure, and I'm super excited to get this guy. Tim Burton used to be my favorite director when I was like young, and I was super into Nightmare Before Christmas. I know it's a huge cult following now, but for many years it didn't. It was kind of like underappreciated. I saw it in the theaters. I loved it from the get-go. I wanted figures of it. One of the first expensive toys I ever bought, because I used to have a lot of toys when I was a kid. But when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I had my own disposable income, and eBay was invented, and I could go on and find toys and stuff, I bought this $100 Jack Skellington 12-inch figure, which to me at time to drop $100 on an action figure was crazy. But like I've been a big fan. I've always wanted collectibles. Now there's collectibles everywhere you look for this. I have lots and lots of Nightmare Before Christmas figures, but I've actually never gotten any version of Oogie Boogie. I don't have him in action figure form. I don't have him in Funko Pop. You know, they've existed. They've released previous ones. I've just never gotten them. So I don't know if I'll get other figures from this set. I was really tempted by the werewolf, and if they weren't $30, I might have gotten the werewolf as well. But yeah, still, I'm stoked about Oogie Boogie.
He's a pretty decent sized character.
Yeah.
Do you think the price tag is reflective of that, or is everyone in this
the whole
set?
wave was $29.99.
Okay.
And that's the thing. Reaction figures, they're kind of, you're paying a little bit for the charm of them.
Yeah.
They're kind of simple. Like when you look at Firefly here, like the sculpt on him is not super complex. Like he's supposed to look like kind of the, I don't want to use the word cheap, but simple.
Yeah.
Like the simple Kenner toys of the 80s and stuff. That's what he's modeled after. And he only moves. He only has 5 points of articulation, which is a lot less than people are used to with G.I. Joes. But when it comes to Oogie Boogie, like, sure, only his legs and arms move, but that's all you would ever want on him. Even if this wasn't a reaction, like, retro-style figure. Like, what other joints do you want to put on this bag of sand? Like,
yeah.
And the sculpt, there's nothing simple about him. Like, that's exactly how I would want an Oogie Boogie figure to look at full size. Like, they didn't make him... They didn't simplify him, which I love. I think it looks great at this scale. It's a very high quality reaction figure. Mm-hmm. One of the better looking ones I think I've ever bought. So yeah, I don't mind the $30 price tag this time around, but I really hope that's not the norm. So I'm just going to very quickly show you Oogie Boogie outside of the packaging. There's not much more to say about this figure that I didn't already say, but I really do think he's great. Although I literally just opened him up, and I will say... I'm surprised he's hollow, and because of that, he feels very lightweight. I was expecting him to be a little heavier than most reaction figures because of his size. Some of the other reaction figures I have, like some of the Ninja Turtle characters, for example, like Ray Fillet, they're larger than your average reaction figure, and they feel it in your hand. But this guy feels almost like if I squeezed him, I could crack him. Like he feels a little delicate. He's so hollow. So that's a little disappointing, to be honest with you. But sculpt-wise, I still think he looks great. Like you can really see the texture of that like canvas sack that he's made out of. He's really great. Now, as far as articulation goes, so reaction figures are only supposed to have 5 points for articulation. So his arms move. He feels very stiff. You can hear those joints cracking when I move them for the first time. It's like the paint is a little stuck or something. So you don't get a whole lot of movement on the legs. You're not going to be able to put them in any real dynamic poses. But, you know, they move as much as you really need them to. And the head turns as well. So, yeah, he's a cool figure. I like him a lot. You can see there he's holding his little dice from the movie, his die. He came with one little accessory, which is a little... Oops, where'd it go? This little beetle, which I don't think this is a specific beetle. It's been a while since I have watched the movie. But, you know, he's full of bugs. That's basically what his bulk of him is supposed to be made of. So I think that one little bug is just kind of a little nod to that. And I just want to speak quickly about how I mentioned earlier that most reaction figures are made simple. So like here's a Snake Eyes, for example. You know, there's no real details. You know, there's no muscle. There's no wrinkles in his clothes. They're kind of meant to just be simplified versions of these characters. Here's Brody from Jaws. You know, this does not look like Roy Schneider, the actor. It's a close enough approximation, but it is not film accurate. It's like a simplified version of him. And what impresses me so much about Oogie Boogie is that he looks film accurate. Like, obviously not 100%, but pretty much as good as you can get with any Oogie Boogie action figure. Like, this looks to be about as good as the upcoming Ultimates version is going to be. Like, I don't really see, other than giving him more accessories, I don't think the sculpt is really going to change that much. And so that's why I think this figure is so impressive.
So, a couple weeks ago, excuse me, I mentioned in one of our last couple videos that Amazon had Prime Days. So I woke up early one morning and I follow this DC Multiverse McFarlane Canada Facebook group, and someone posted, "Hey, McFarlane DC figures are like 30% off." So I was like, of course they're going to be 30% off. So I went and I had a look, and I ended up getting a couple. Also some other non-McFarlane ones. So let's just start with what drew me to the sale. So I'm a big fan of the Arkham video game series.
Okay.
This Arkham Knight hasn't been available locally.
He's pretty glary
in
there.
the wild.
So this is another variation of Batman, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this hasn't been available locally, and he's been hard to find online. Randomly, Amazon had him there that day. So I was like, oh, nice.
He's cool.
So with 30% off, he was kicking around at... He was a $42.99-er.
I actually like him quite a bit, although his eyes seem far apart, strangely.
Yes, they do.
Makes him look a little...
Weird.
A little derpy.
Yeah.
But not in a bad way. It makes him look almost like... Because this looks like it could be a robot or something, almost. And he's a cool-looking robot. But if that's supposed to be Bruce Wayne under there, then I question why the eyes are kind of on the side of the head almost.
It's not.
So who's in there?
The Arkham Knight.
Okay. Do we know who that is?
Well, I do. I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Okay. No. Okay. We won't spoil it for you. But there's a human in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the eyes are a little far apart for that to be believable, but it's a cool looking figure. I like it.
Okay, so he's 30% off at $42.99, which was a decent snag for me.
Okay.
The next one was the Man Bat, which I did not bring because he's one of the mega figures, and
How do you think Man Bat wings would compare to Venom?
they're probably not that big, but they're probably close.
Cool.
I didn't open them yet, but yeah, he's a beefy character. So that was the initial want there, because I've only seen him once locally, and that's where you sent me the picture at GameStop that day. So then I saw Reverse Flash. Oh, I should say too that he was $59.99 on Amazon for Prime Days and 30% off. So that
Cool.
is what pulled the trigger. So Reverse Flash, again, I'm not typically a Flash Rogue fan, but 30% off at $32.99.
And this looks like I have the normal good guy Flash.
Yeah.
Is this mostly a repaint? He's got a new head,
Yeah.
obviously.
New head. I compared it side by side, and it looks like they just reused.
Yeah. Well, I really like that Flash figure. So
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, that's cool. I like this guy too.
So that was purchase number 2. So then back on the G.I. Joe wagon, I'm like, McFarlane stuff is 30% off. What else do they have? So I started looking for G.I. Joe figures. Again, don't have to talk about these because you've posted previous reviews on them, so go check those out. I bought the Red Ninja. I'm really into ninjas.
And I think... Yep, so Red Ninja, yeah, I have reviewed him. That's a Wave 1 figure. He's been around for a while.
Yeah. So 30% off this bad boy. I got Spirit.
And what I was looking over there, just trying to remember if Spirit was a figure I had reviewed yet, but I did.
You did review
I did
Spirit.
review that figure.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I remember you talking about the eagle.
The giant seagull on his arm. Yeah.
Seagull. Yeah. So he was 30% off and ran pretty cheap compared to like Toys R Us prices.
Yeah.
Sorry, Toys R Us. We always shit on you, but... And my favorite G.I. Joe character of all time, Cobra character, is Storm Shadow. I haven't been able to find him, and it's not the Snake Eyes version, it's the real version.
Yeah.
Haven't been able to find him locally or even on Amazon since I started collecting, and he showed up on Prime Days as well, so I picked him up and was stoked to get him. One other figure I did get, and I forgot to bring tonight, was the Amazing Fantasy Spider-Man, which was put out from the 60th anniversary of Spider-Man's first appearance in Amazing Fantasy 15.
Right. And that's a rarity in that it's probably a Marvel Legend that you're going to get that I'm not going to get. Mm-hmm. However, I was looking forward to you actually bringing it over here so I could kind of see it.
I know, next time.
Because I buy a lot of Marvel Legends and I buy a lot of variations of Spider-Man. But this is one I just didn't feel was different enough from the many other Spider-Mans that I have. So I was kind of planning on skipping it, especially at these price points.
Yeah.
Because it's like $45. So yeah, not really worth it to me. But if you brought it over and I really fell in love with it, maybe I would. So, all right, let's wrap it up.
So you know what to do. Like, subscribe, leave us comments. We always enjoy interacting.
We'll see you soon. Until then, ciao.
Keep collecting.